What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we're going over a little preview for this LSU team. We're going over our predictions, how this LSU team is going to fare, and why I think this LSU team has one of the toughest schedules in college football, but they also have one of the most talented teams in college football as well. We're going to go over all the questions for LSU, where they are strong at, and why this team should have pretty high expectations. Now, when you look at LSU and their former coaching tree, when you look at Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron, all these guys won a national championship by the time where Brian Kelly is at right now. But I don't think that should be indicative of the expectations for this LSU team. When you look at those past coaches, someone such as Ed Orgeron, where I don't even think he was that great of a coach. I don't even think he was a better coach than Brian Kelly. That was a guy that backed into one of the most talented teams of all time in that LSU team. Arguably, it would be a sin if that team didn't win a national championship with the NFL All-Pros they had on that team. That team was absolutely loaded, one of the best teams of all time. So I don't think the expectation for this LSU team should be like national championship or bust, especially them being in the SEC and the schedule they have laid in front of them. But I definitely think it should be college football playoff or bust after last year as well. Not making it, losing a couple of games they definitely shouldn't have lost. That cannot happen this year. But this LSU team in the 2025 schedules of college football definitely is at the top of the list of one of the toughest schedules in college football. We're going to go over this offense and why I believe this LSU offense could be possibly the best offense in the entire country. Definitely could be the most explosive offense in the entire country for sure. Let's get into it. Now, they get one of the best wide receiver transfer portal ads, arguably the best wide receiver transfer portal ads in Nick Anderson. You talk about Nick Anderson on a tough Oklahoma team last year in a QB carousel, still had double-digit touchdowns, nearly 800 yards. This is a guy that's probably the biggest field stretcher in college football, and paired up with Garrett Nussmeier, who's an absolute gunslinger, there's going to be a ton more opportunities for him. We're looking at possibly a 1,000-plus yard receiver with double-digit touchdowns. Then you get into Barry Brown as well, the transfer ad from Kentucky. Again, not really a crazy season when you look at 361 yards and 3 touchdowns, but another guy that's an absolute field stretcher, a track star. He averaged 12.4 yards per catch last year. Another guy that can completely stretch the field. Then you look at Aaron Anderson. You could say he was arguably their best player on this offense. I know there was Kyron Lacy, RIP, and Mason Taylor, but he was definitely the guy they went to for explosive plays as well. You're looking at a guy last year with 14.5 average yards per catch, 884 yards and 5 touchdowns. I expect him to even take a jump up in a much improved offense where, again, there's going to be a ton of guys that's going to be putting pressure on defense. With these 3 receivers, you're arguably looking at the most explosive receiving core in the country. Like, you're looking at 3 guys that are absolute track stars with probably the biggest gunslinger in college football, the guy that will give them the most chances. Then when you look at the running back position, I love the running back position for LSU. I think Caden Durham last year as a freshman was one of the most promising freshmen in the country. Now, it did take them a little bit to gain trust in Caden Durham. And not only that, he was injured a little bit last year as well. But the way he came in as a true freshman, you're looking at 753 yards and 6 touchdowns on 140 attempts. He was averaging 5.4 yards per carry. I think Caden Durham is going to be absolutely explosive for this LSU team in a better offense a year above his freshman year. I think Caden Durham is going to be an absolute stud, and he showed it last year. Then you get into Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier is a guy that could very well be the first pick in the NFL draft next year. He's an absolute gunslinger. You're pairing him with 3 track stars as his receiving core, and you pair him up with one of the best freshman players in the country last year in Caden Durham. This is going to be one of the most explosive offenses in the country. Now, the whole thing with Garrett Nussmeier, because we've seen it in a couple of games that led LSU to lose the games, it's going to be his calculated chances. We get that Garrett Nussmeier is an absolute gunslinger. He's going to take chances, especially with the receiving core and 3 deep threats that he has. He's definitely going to take chances, but it's all about calculated risk. Like, he has to be able to make the right decisions and give his receivers the right chances we can't see many multi-turnover games from Garrett Nussmeier with the gauntlet of schedule he has and the opponents he's going to be facing. So that's another thing to look out for. Now, for this LSU defense, this is where I'm a little worried about this team. I don't think it was as bad as the defense last year or the year before. The year before was like historically bad when you look at that offense with Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors. Like that defense, they were playing shootout games every game, and that led that team to not make the college football playoffs because their offense was absolutely ridiculous. Now, this defense, I think, will be confident. I don't think it would be at the top of the SEC, but I think if this defense is confident with this offense, this is definitely a college football playoff team. Now, the leader of this defense, in my opinion, is definitely going to be Harold Perkins Jr. I think he is one of the best linebackers in college football. I think he's going to be the one that gets up this defense. I really like the transfer in Patrick Payton as well. I liked him at Florida State when they were good. I think he has a ton of talent. I think last year, again, he was just in a terrible situation. But I think that's a huge add for this defense. The big thing for me is going to be the secondary. When you look at A.J. Hawkey, Monster Delaney, Tamarcus Cooley, like that secondary is full of transfers. It's going to be very interesting to see in an SEC, especially in a week one game that we're going to get into against Clemson and their receiving corps. If that secondary full of transfers can hold up, Jack Pyburn is also going to be a big transfer on the edge as well. Like, I think this defense could be competent. It's going to really depend on how great Harold Perkins and Patrick Payton are at getting to the quarterback. But they have a lot of transfers. Like, when you look at this defense, you're looking at 5 transfer starters. So it's going to be very interesting to see if this defensive coaching staff could get this defense in a bind for week one. When you look at Clemson returning the most starters in college football and this defense full of transfer ads, are they going to be able to gel week one to stop this Clemson team? Now, we're going to get into the schedule for this LSU team and basically tell you guys what I expect. So for this LSU schedule, it is, like I said, one of the toughest schedules in college football. The one good thing I do have to say about this LSU team, with how talented they are and the gauntlet of a schedule that they have, if the college football committee and if there's going to be a couple of 3-loss teams in the college football playoffs, LSU would have to be one of them with their talent and their schedule and them being in the SEC. If they're going to give a 3-loss team a college football playoff spot, which I believe there will be a couple of 3-loss playoff teams in the college football playoffs, LSU would have to be one of them. Now, week one, they do play the Clemson Tigers. Clemson Tigers, everybody expects to be in the mix for a top 5 team in college football. Like I said, they return the most starters in college football along with Penn State. So this Clemson team is going to be absolutely crazy. I think the defense for Clemson is a little better than this LSU team, and this offense is arguably as explosive. This is a game I don't really expect LSU to win, especially when you look at the last 3 years of LSU opening games. When you look at USC, when you look at who else did they play? Florida State, and they played somebody else the last 3 years. I don't know why. I can't get my memory right. They lost the last 3 opening games. So an opening game is absolutely huge, especially for a team like this that can't afford many losses, has a tough schedule. This is going to be tough. I think this Clemson game is going to be the toughest game on their schedule. Not only is Clemson probably the hardest team they face, but also, like I said, with their transfer ads on the defense side of the ball for LSU, I don't know if that secondary is going to be ready for Clemson's wide receiving corps. Then they play Louisiana Tech. They're going to roll right through them, obviously. They play the Florida Gators, which should be a very interesting team. You're looking at a top 25 team. You're looking at a guy in DJ Lagway that everybody has super high expectations for. Again, we're going to see how legit this Florida Gators team is very early, how they come out, and how legit DJ Lagway is. But I think LSU is definitely the better team in that matchup. Southeastern LA Lions, they're going to absolutely destroy them. Ole Miss is a very tough game for LSU. I expect this Ole Miss team to definitely be good as well. I think LSU is the better team, but that game's at Ole Miss, so that game's going to be very tough. They play South Carolina. It is Baton Rouge. I expect LSU to win that game. That's a game LSU has to win. That South Carolina team is going to be good as well. It's going to be interesting to see what we get out of Lenore Sellers. Dylan Stewart, obviously, on the defensive side of the ball, is an absolute monster as well. So that's going to be very interesting. That's a game they have to win. Then they have a couple of games in my schedule, like this next one, that teams normally can drop. as SEC matchups, but they cannot afford a hiccup. They play Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. They have to absolutely crush them, in my opinion. Then they play Texas A&M. They lost to Texas A&M in blowout fashion last year. This cannot happen again. Texas A&M is going to be good. Their defense is always very good. Their defense was great last year, one of the best defenses in college football. And you're adding another year of Marcel Reed, a dual-threat quarterback that could cause problems for a defense. That game is luckily at LSU, which I think is huge for LSU. Them not having to play at Kyle Field. This is a game they should win. They are the better team. They have to win it. Then the next game after that, they play at Alabama. Again, I expect LSU to be better than Alabama, but I expect the Alabama team to be better than last year. And it's an Alabama team that beat LSU last year. I expect the Alabama team to be a lot better, but they were able to retain on offense. I think Ty Simpson is a better system fit for their offense than Jalen Milroe was. I think the Alabama team is going to be really good. I think it's going to be a very tough game for them, and I could see them dropping for sure, even though I think LSU is a better team. Then they play Arkansas, again, very similar to Vanderbilt, a game that you could see an SEC powerhouse definitely drop, but this cannot happen. They have to blow the doors off Arkansas. They play WKU. They should absolutely destroy them. And then they play Oklahoma at Oklahoma in their last game. Oklahoma, another team with John Mateer and their transfer ads and another year of Brett Venables. That's a team that's a very big question mark. Like, John Mateer is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this Oklahoma team pans out. And they're going to have time as they play LSU in the last week of college football. So that's going to be very interesting to see as well. When you look at this LSU team, like, look at the quarterbacks they play. They play multiple, like 4 top 10 quarterbacks in the country. When you look at Cade Klubnik, DJ Lagway, Lenore Sellers, John Mateer, this schedule is an absolute gauntlet. And when you look at the tough games, you have Clemson, Florida, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Alabama, and Oklahoma. So you have 6 extremely tough games. They have to at least go 3-3. And like I said, outside of Clemson, I think they're a better team in every other matchup. Again, home and away is going to matter a lot. This is an LSU team that like I said, we have super high expectations for. I think this LSU team has arguably the best offense in the entire country, and we need this defense to take a step up. It's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. Like I said again, they really cannot afford any hiccups, and a week 1 win would be huge for them, even though I don't expect it. But that wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Drop down below what you think of this LSU team, and we